A few weeks ago, while on a late night drive, I was passing by some auto dealerships when I saw this very cool F87 M2, so I had to stop to take a look. And well, would you look at that? I didn't know they put V6s in these things. So after taking a quick peek, I get back in my car to head back home. I pull back onto the street and pass this SUV. They were doing a rather slow pace and they were in a different lane, but I went around them without doing anything aggressive or anything, just driving completely normal. This vehicle then speeds up and begins to follow me very closely. And to make a long story short, this guy proceeded to follow me unprovoked, as close to my rear bumper as he possibly could be, followed my every lane maneuver, every switch, every turn that I took for about 10-15 minutes before finally splitting off. He wasn't trying to race, he wasn't trying to cruise, he was just straight up following me. And it was weird because I didn't know his intention and I wasn't going to lead him to my house. So after that, I started to head back home, and about 15 minutes later, when I'm getting pretty close to my house again, a vehicle merges onto the highway with a very familiar looking light pattern. So I take a different exit and get back onto the highway the opposite direction that I was just going, and I don't know how to explain it. It was the same guy. He found me again and started following me again, except this time I'm speeding, but still he's staying as close as he can possibly be, following me for no apparent reason. I call the police to tell them what's going on, and I tell them that I'm gonna lead him to the police department, and he follows me all the way there until I turn into their parking lot. A couple minutes later, the police arrive, so I'm talking with the officers, explaining what happened, and they probably the whole time think I'm crazy, think that maybe I'm just being too paranoid, that someone would be following me for no reason, split off from the path, and then somehow find me again. But that is what happened, and of course in those moments I wasn't thinking of identifying what kind of vehicle was behind me or trying to read off the license plates. Then the officer was like, well, do you have any dash cam or anything like that? And I told him no, but I should. So once I got home without anybody following me, I followed up with an email from a company called Redtiger that wanted me to check out their dash cam. So today I'm going to give my honest review on the F17 Dashcam from Redtiger, as well as show you exactly how I installed it into my e92 BMW and how to hardwire the power supply into the fuse box. The first category that I like to review products based on is how much the name sounds like an aircraft. F17 sounds exactly like a fighter jet, so immediately it gets a 10 out of 10 in this category. First glance looking at this product, it's a 3-channel dash camera, meaning that it has a front-facing lens, a cabin-facing lens, and then a lens that you can face out the rear windshield. It uses Sony Starvis 2 sensors in the front and rear cameras. Huh? Sony Starfish? What does that mean? To put in layman's terms, this is the world's first full-color night vision dash camera with an in-cabin view. It also has 5G Wi-Fi connectivity, so you can download your footage, GPS capabilities so it can track speed and location, dual-channel HDR, and it has a parking mode if you hardline it, which I'm going to show you how to do. So here's a quick look at the packaging and the hardwire kit, which is sold separately. It includes, of course, the 2 camera modules, all the wires to connect the cameras together, and the cigarette lighter power supply if you don't plan on having the parking mode. The camera itself comes pre-installed with a SanDisk 128GB micro SD card, and they even include a tiny little plastic trim tool, which is convenient. But I'll skip the install and save it for a later part in the video, but let's show you what you actually want to know. The front camera shoots in 4K. Obviously, this is the most important view angle to have, so it makes sense that this one is capable of the highest resolution. Now here's some shots out of the front lens. Plenty of detail for pretty much anything that can happen in front of you. The colors coming out of this lens are very vibrant, and it does a good job at not overexposing even in very bright situations or high glare situations, keeping everything visible, which is the whole point. Now it does kind of look like the sharpness is ramped up very high digitally, but this keeps the fine details visible for a pretty good distance. Here's a zoom in on some license plates in front of me to show the detail at distance. Now there's no personal information that just the average person can look up on a license plate, so I'm not doxing anybody, don't worry. I always find it funny when people cover their license plate in the pictures when they're selling their car. The nighttime shots actually look really good. You can see everything clearly, unlike this really deep pothole that I decked, which, speaking of, this clip was automatically grouped aside because the camera has a built-in G-force sensor which will detect an impact or a hard braking situation, etc., and automatically group the footage into a folder which won't get overwritten. But you can also press this button on the camera to do the same thing and set the footage aside in a separate folder from the rest. Like when something stupid happens, like, you know, someone merges without checking their blind spots. You know, day-to-day things that happen to me quite frequently. Frankly, there are a lot of idiots on the road and a lot of people who probably don't deserve to have a license. Being a defensive driver, of course you hope for the best, but you got to expect the worst. And having a dash camera might be your only witness protecting you from someone else's folly. The camera also has pretty good audio. and I'm also a pretty good air drummer. The interior shots look good during the daytime, but I have noticed in extreme low light conditions that the quality begins to diminish. However, unless you're a rideshare driver, the interior camera probably doesn't matter much to you. The interior camera is not night vision, so without some sort of ambient light or street lights coming in, the shots aren't really too great. Same goes for the rear camera. There's no night vision, so the shots that are produced in very low light conditions are not too great. But to be fair, my rear window is also tinted. As far as the front camera at nighttime, it's still usable for most applications until you need something with fine detail. Unless you're directly behind the car and the camera is very stable and the object isn't moving across the field of view, you begin to lose a lot of the fine details like license plate numbers pretty quickly, which is one thing that disappoints me about this camera. Because for example, the other day I was counting on the dash camera to get a license plate readout so I could report something that I witnessed, but when I went to look back at the footage, there was nothing legible. But depending on the use case, it may or may not matter. For example, you're passing through an intersection and someone who's trying to turn skips you right away and you guys collide, you have all the proof that you need that you weren't the one at fault. Or maybe it's the opposite, where you don't have the right of way and this dumbass idiot lets me go. I guess.
Okay, what the fuck are you doing?
So if you're in some type of situation, especially at nighttime, it still might be a good idea just to try and remember the license plate as best as you can. This camera also has a parking feature, but it only works if you hardwire the camera to your fuse box, which I'm going to show you how to do. But when this mode is turned on, it basically records a time lapse. So if something happens to your car while it's parked, you have the evidence there, which you could set the record for various durations up to 48 hours, which is long enough to see the ghosts come out at night. If it detects the voltage getting too low, no worries, it will stop to prevent draining your car's battery. Now for some other stuff to note about the camera itself, the buttons and the touchscreen are both pretty responsive, about as well as you'd expect for anything in this day and age. Although by default, every click that you make on the screen is going to make a very loud, annoying sound, but luckily you can turn it off, and that was the first thing that I did. Also, I noticed that the unit gets pretty hot, but it seems to have no impact on the performance of the camera. Now when it comes to removing the footage off of the camera, you have two options. You can either do it over Wi-Fi, which involves downloading the app to your phone and then connecting it to the camera, which supports up to 30 megabytes per second using the 5.8G Wi-Fi 6, which is 10 times faster than the traditional 2.4G Wi-Fi. Overall, the app functionality works pretty well and the downloads are pretty quick. Also, being that the camera has a built-in GPS, it's replaying that details such as the location and the speed. The only thing that I don't like about transferring the footage over the Wi-Fi is that once you're done, it can be a little bit finicky to turn off the Wi-Fi mode on the camera, which is important because when it's in the Wi-Fi mode, the camera's not recording. I'm not exactly sure why, but I seem to have a struggle with it. Maybe it's user error. The other method is to simply take the SD card and plug it into your computer, which works pretty well because it automatically organizes the footage based on which camera recorded it, as well as automatically labels the files in a way that's easy to understand. An important thing to mention is on the camera, you have the option to set how long these recording blocks are, as well as the resolution that the cameras are shooting in, which if you can compromise a lower resolution, you'll have more time before the footage overwrites itself. And for the most part, that's pretty much everything to go over about the camera itself before I show you how to install it. Overall, it's a pretty decent dash camera, but if you're looking to get one yourself, I got the links in the description below, as well as a couple coupon codes on the screen and down there as well. Purchasing from my link helps support what I do on this channel, so if you're interested, by all means, please check out the links in the description below. Now let's install it into the car. Alright, so we'll start with the power wire. These color wires are going to sit inside the glove box.
Remove the little door by turning. See?
Seems like we have maybe 3 or 4 feet to come up through the glove box, up the A-pillar, over the headliner, and then down to the camera. Luckily it comes with a plastic trim tool. If you look closely in there, you can see my plastic trim tool. It looks like we will have just enough. We're gonna need to remove this little airbag cover thing because it hides a screw. So yeah, if you get under that with a pick tool, it comes off nicely without damaging it. That little tiny screw comes out easy. It was a T15 with the trim tool. I'll pull it back gently. Pull back a bit of the weather seal too to make this easy. I'll try and hide some of the excess in here too. Ooh, too, yeah, if I really wanted. There's a spot where I could have tucked it all the way back, but this should work just fine. All these side clips too. Pull the weather seal completely down. I might need to remove these handles. That corner's a little tough to get them tucked up, but I bet you if I remove the mirror, so those are T25s, I know that. Yeah, because on your surface, it's also spring clean. Alright, so for the rear camera wire, we've made it this far back. This should pull out with a trim tool, and then you can lower the sunroof a little bit with this screw. It's underneath. So then I'm gonna tuck it up and under. There's another one of these right here where you just pry off with a pick. Then I'll run the camera wire back. I might keep it simple and just put it off to the side because it's just a rear camera. It doesn't need to be perfectly center. This one's pretty tight, and I really don't want to break it by yanking on it. With it kind of pried up, I'm just gonna keep tucking it. So this is how I did that. I had this pry under here, and then with this one, I wedged it underneath with the wire somewhat in place and just kind of pulled the trim tool and let the trim tool do the tucking. And there's another little T15. All right, so I have the wire all the way back to here, but the way I kind of did it was I pulled back where I could grab it securely, kind of right here. Used the trim tool to try and push it up and hook it underneath. And then once it was back to here, it was pretty straightforward. I think I started it over here and then tucked it. This is how I mounted the camera. I put it at a slight angle to kind of compensate for the curve of the window to try and aim mostly central. And then I folded up the wire. It's a lot of wire. Despite how big that wound was, I was able to push it back. It looks like it's just barely enough. Once I get the screw in, I'll hug that in, and that wire is nice and hidden. So here's kind of a final look at how I did the wires. I used one of these little wire clamp thingies. They included a bunch of them. It's not exactly big enough to hold two of them, but it's kind of supporting them, just kind of keeping them out of the way. Goes up through there, can't see it at all. One goes down, the other one goes back. Same thing, you can't see anything all the way to the back. So now we can move on to the wiring portion. Black one's going to be ground. That's going to be very easy. I'm going to unscrew this right here, and that's where I'm going to have the ground clamp down. It comes with a bunch of fuse taps. Comes with a bunch of them, different sizes, and there's 2 packages. So this is how I have it wired up. Ground is underneath that screw right there. The constant power, or the yellow B+ wire, is on fuse number 2 in the top left, as you can see. And then for the accessory wire, the red one, it's on fuse number 11 in the top right. It was pretty straightforward to figure out which ones would work, but I'll show you how I did. Essentially what I did was I took the fuse tap and I touched the prong to the contact points on the fuses as they were plugged into the car until I found one that lit up the box even without the key in the ignition. So I'll give you an example. I'm touching the ends of the fuses, and there's one that's also got constant power. See, it's reading the voltage 12.4. So when you find one that's got power even without the key in the ignition, you take that fuse out and you plug it in with the other fuse that's on your fuse tap, and the box should light up. So now for the accessory one, you're trying to find a circuit that's only on when the key is in the ignition. So what I did do was I tapped the ends of fuses until I found one that didn't make the this box say ACC when the key is not in the ignition. So I'm pronging this one up top and it says ACC. That means that fuse has power. So I did this until I found a fuse that was not active with the key out of the ignition. And I chose fuse number 11. So I'll show you exactly what you want. I'll put the key in the ignition. I'll click it on, and it should read ACC. Key out. It's still gonna read it because the car doesn't fully turn everything off immediately. I locked the door, and it read 12 volts.
and then that shutdown timer began.
So that is how I went about installing the dash camera. Once again, if you're interested in this product, I've got the links in the description with coupons. Thanks for watching, and thank you to Redtiger for sponsoring me.